Hi, thanks for joining my presentation today. I'll be talking to you about my research investigating developmental milestones of motor and social behaviors in wild, immature chimpanzees and what implications our work has for comparative research. This work was done in collaboration with Patrick Sasinski, Grégoire Nohon, Christophe Bösch, Roman Wittig and Catherine Crockford. In primate species, development is extended, with various motor and social traits taking time to develop. The same is true in humans. Such a long developmental period has been proposed to have co-evolved with an exceptionally long lifespan, with the first years of life being especially important in developing adult skills. In humans, development is well researched. Developmental milestones are a set of behaviors that are demonstrated by specific ages during infancy and typical development. This provides a framework for monitoring an infant over time and identifying variation in development from the norm. There are these guidelines, as you see here, for parents when their children should reach a breadth of different milestones. However, in other closely related primate species, developmental milestones have been less well mapped. For example, chimpanzees. Locomotor and other traits such as vocalizations are often viewed as fixed from birth in non-human primate species. However, as chimpanzees are one of humans' closest living relatives, one would also expect behavioral traits to develop until adulthood. As chimpanzees are thought to have a shorter lifespan compared to modern humans, one may also expect faster maturation of some behavioral traits compared to humans. There's a lack of quantitative studies investigating development from birth in the wild, so from a natural socio-ecological setting. The golden standard so far have been Jane Goodall's studies. However, her sample size was quite limited. She only looked at 4 individuals. To fill this gap, we collected data in the Taï National Park in West Africa. Data on chimpanzee behavior has been collected there since the late 1980s. For this study, we collected data over 6 years from 19 individuals, so 8 females and 11 males, from the first month after birth for more than 3 years. In total, we collected more than 3,400 hours of observational data. The types of behavioral variables that we collected for this study are motor, social interaction, and communication traits. And so now we come to the results, which at this point are purely descriptive. So here we have our general plot. We describe developmental milestones in more than 35 different behavioral traits. So for example, sitting up, grooming, or cracking nuts. On the x-axis, we have the age at which the traits were first observed, so from 0 to 5.5 years. The box plots represent the medians, interquartile ranges, and outliers, and the red spots are the mean first observation months. The box plots are colored depending on the type of traits they represent. So we have the motor traits split into gross motor, which involve movement of large body parts, and fine motor, which involve fine-scaled movements of fingers and toes. Then in green we have the social interaction traits, and in blue the communication traits. Now if we zoom into the different trait types, we find for the gross motor traits that they mainly emerge within the first 6 months after birth. We have traits such as sitting up, standing up, and walking. If we compare gross motor milestones in chimpanzees to the human literature, we find that development is overall accelerated compared to humans. So here we have some examples from the human literature. These red vertical lines represent norms from developmental milestones in humans. Development in chimpanzees is faster even when we control for age at first reproduction and overall lifespan. However, for the other trait types, this species difference was not so clear. So here we have the fine motor traits, which mainly emerge after the first 6 months after birth. So we have object play, which emerges around the same time in chimpanzees and humans. Tool use is a little bit later in humans compared to chimpanzees. For the social interaction traits, we found that comparable traits such as reassurance and empathy in humans occurred earlier in humans compared to chimpanzees. For the communication traits, we compared traits such as laughing, which also occurred earlier in humans compared to chimpanzees. So if we now go back to the bigger picture, we can say that not all behavioral traits are expressed from birth in chimpanzees, and as in humans, need time to mature. More complex behavioral traits such as grooming or cracking nuts emerge later in development, with those traits also showing larger inter-individual variation than earlier emerging traits. Overall, what we can say at this point is that development is not systematically faster in chimpanzees compared to humans, and that development unfolds in a similar fashion as seen in our own species. So what implications does our work have for comparative research? Using such a developmental milestone framework, which is well established in the human medical literature, can be really useful in identifying developmental norms and variation from such norms in various animal species. And in turn, we can then study the drivers that lead to such deviations from the norm. When comparing development between but also within species, I think it's crucial to match subjects by sex, age, and lifespan as far as is possible, and to collect data from a wide range of populations and socio-ecological settings to shed further light on what drives variation in development. So if you would like to find out more about this research, have a look in the January issue of Developmental Science and keep an eye out for an invited commentary and our response to it, elaborating on how to improve comparative science. And thanks for your attention.